Please leave a comment where you are watching from. Oh, I'm super later to the Tinder Tales party, but I've got a good one, so hopefully someone sees this and gets a kick out of it. A few years ago, I get out of a bad relationship and immediately jump into online dating as a distraction because, of course. Day one, I pair off with a girl who looks just like my ex. Bad sign, I know, but I can't help myself. She and I meet, and she's younger than I thought. Maybe 22, but she's bright and bubbly and fun. So instead of grabbing coffee, I go all in and ask her to come get dinner. We split a burger, we're chatty, everything's great. So afterward, she says, let's go party at a bar. Awesome, this is going really well. We walk next door, and I lay my card down, open a tab, and excuse myself to the restroom. I come back out, and Tinder girl has grabbed a booth, a couple of beers, and 6 shots. I asked, where did these come from? And she says, oh, I thought you wanted to party with me, winky face. I'm pretty inhibition-free, so I downed 2 of the shots, and the look in her eye went from sweet and bubbly to tiger stalking prey. So she follows suit and downs 2 shots and most of her beer. Then she inhales the last shot and tells me, your turn. Now, I'm a 220 pounds guy. I can hang. She's a 100 pounds waif of a girl, but I didn't know what to expect. Sometimes the little ones can surprise you. Well, we order 2 more beers, and within 10 minutes she's surprising me. She presses up against me in the booth and starts undoing my belt buckle and shoves her hand into my pants. So at like 8 p.m. in a half-empty bar, this girl straddles me in a booth, facing the window, and starts kissing my neck and giving me a handjob, and I'm looking around and all eyes are on us. There are even smokers watching from outside. I pull her off of me and tell her this is way too much. Let's just bring it down a peg. And then she says to me, straight-faced, I've been with at least 200 other guys and nobody has ever told me no before. 200 guys? Listen, I'm all for enjoying yourself, but that I can't get with. Not on a first date. Not with my dick just moments ago in your hand. So we're both pretty drunk at this point, and I tell her I have to leave. This is way too much, way too soon. I walk outside, and she is right behind me. I'm hailing myself a cab, and she grabs me and says, where do you think you're going? I told her, home. I've had enough for tonight. Then she tells me, I'm coming with you. I live in Long Island, and I don't even know how to get home from here. WTF? This girl came an hour and a half into the city on the train, and is now literally beyond taking care of herself. She's almost falling over, and now I feel responsible for her. There's no way I can just leave her here, although I'm sure she can find some other schmuck to fall for her shit. The problem with all of this is that my female friend asterisk, not GF, is crashing at my place that night because she had a gig nearby early the next morning. So now I've got to bring this super drunk, super horny girl back to my place, after I promised my friend a nice quiet place to crash. Gah! So Tinder girl is blackout, drunk in the cab, trying to grope at me whenever she comes to. Now I'm just swatting her away like a lovesick puppy. I get us into my place and crash into everything trying to get her onto the couch. Mind you, I'm drunker than I thought. I put Tinder girl down, and I lay on the other side of the couch. I have to assume my friend is woken up and can hear everything, but she doesn't come out into the living room to check. The girl is already snoring, and I close my eyes. And I go on to have a great dream about hooking up with my ex-GF, until I'm suddenly waking up in the pitch black, and the fucking drunk girl has my dick out and is jerking me off. I come to, and realize her clothes are completely off, and she's trying to climb on top of me. In any other situation I'd be psyched, but all I'm thinking about is the other 200 guys she's pulled this with, and no fucking way I'm letting her get me inside her. I had to fight her off even though half of me wants to just give in. But she's 100 pounds, and it's laughably easy to push her still drunk, tiny, naked ass off of me. I pull my pants up, and she crumples to the other side of the couch and starts sobbing. She tells me, you don't understand how hard it's been since my husband left me. I miss him so much. I just wanted you to fuck me. Why is that so hard? Husband left you? You're 22. WTF is going on here? And of course, this is when my friend comes out of the bedroom. At 4 a.m., with a sobbing drunk, naked, 100 pounds girl on my couch. And my friend asks me, what did you do to her? I brought my friend into the other room and explained, but I'm sure it just sounded like, I fed this girl shots and brought her home, and she's sad because I keep letting her touch my dick. So my friend tells me, I thought you were better than this, and leaves early for her gig. So I take my clothes off, crawl into my now free bed, and of course, drunk Tinder girl, climbs in Raiite behind me and starts spooning me. We're both defeated and exhausted, and a little hungover at this point, so we both settled for middle ground. We made out for a while, and she didn't try to rape me, and we both fell asleep. The next day, the bright, bubbly girl from the night before is back in her wits, and says, "Let's go get brunch." Yum, and grabs my hand to pull me out of bed. I got dressed, walked her downstairs and outside, and then immediately turned around and walked back inside and left her out there. And we never spoke again. The night I first met Emily, it felt like the universe had finally thrown me a bone. Her photos didn't do her justice. She was stunning, the kind of beautiful that makes everyone else in the room fade into the background. But it wasn't just her looks. She had a spark, a confidence, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world she cared to talk to. I'd been on enough dates to know that kind of chemistry doesn't come around often, or ever. Our date was straightforward. Dinner at a cozy little Italian spot, followed by a walk through the park. Nothing fancy, but it didn't need to be. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by her light, melodic laugh and the occasional shy smile that seemed out of place for someone so assured. By the time we said goodnight, I felt like I'd won the lottery. The next day, when she texted me inviting me to her friend's birthday party downtown, I didn't even hesitate. Sure, I had work the next morning, but when she sweetened the deal by offering her place as a crash pad, I was sold. Call it what you will, naivety, optimism, or just plain bad judgment, but I was all in. The party was in full swing when we arrived. The bar was packed, music thumping just loud enough to make conversation a challenge, but not impossible. Emily introduced me to her circle of friends, a lively group that welcomed me with open arms. Drinks flowed freely, laughter filled the air, and for a moment I thought to myself, this is it. I could get used to this. Then, out of nowhere, the night took a sharp left turn. It started small, something I almost didn't notice. Emily's laugh grew a little too sharp, her smile a little too tight. She'd glance at me, then at her friends, her eyes narrowing in ways I couldn't quite decipher. I chalked it up to the alcohol, or maybe some inside joke I wasn't privy to. But then it escalated. One moment we were standing at the bar, her hand casually resting on my arm as we talked to one of her friends. The next, she was shouting. Not at me, not at anyone in particular, just shouting. A burst of anger that seemed to come out of nowhere. Heads turned, conversations stopped, and before I could piece together what the hell was happening, she stormed out of the bar. I just stood there, stunned. Her friends exchanged awkward glances, a few of them muttering under their breaths. One of them, a guy named Trent, leaned in and said, "You should probably go after her." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "It's our second date," I said, shaking my head. Trent nodded, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Fair enough." And that was that. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I stayed at the party, nursing a glass of water and chatting with her friends, who, to my surprise, seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. There was no judgment, no awkwardness, just a group of people having a good time. By the time I made it back to Emily's place, she was nowhere to be found. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and the lights were off. I debated whether to text her, but something told me to just let it go. I crashed on her couch and left early the next morning, leaving a polite, "Thanks for the invite" text she never responded to. What happened next was unexpected, to say the least. Over the following weeks, I started getting texts from her friends, not Emily but her friends. They'd invite me out for drinks, trivia nights, and the occasional backyard barbecue. At first, I felt weird about it, like I was betraying some unspoken rule of dating. But they were persistent, and honestly, they were a great group of people. As for Emily, she faded into the background. I'd hear snippets of gossip here and there, something about a new boyfriend, a falling out with one of the girls, a job change, but nothing concrete. One night, months after the party, I finally asked Trent about it. We were sitting around a fire pit in his backyard, beers in hand, when I said, "So, what's the deal with Emily? Does she ever talk about that night?" Trent chuckled, taking a long sip of his beer before answering. "Man, Emily's complicated. She has this thing where she expects people to chase after her. Like literally. She pulls that stunt all the time, storming off, making a scene. It's like a test or something." "A test?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah. She wants to see if you'll drop everything for her. If you'll prove you care enough to come running. It's exhausting." "Sounds like it," I said, shaking my head. Trent shrugged. "She's not a bad person, just a lot. Honestly, I think you dodged a bullet." As time went on, my connection to Emily's friends only grew stronger. We became a tight-knit group, the kind of people you could call at 2 a.m. when your car broke down or when you needed someone to talk to. They never brought up Emily, and neither did I. It was as if she'd been erased from the narrative, a footnote in a story that had taken on a life of its own. But every now and then, late at night when the world was quiet and my mind wandered, I'd think about her. About that night at the bar, the look in her eyes as she stormed out, the way she'd captivated me on our first date. I'd wonder what might have been if I'd chased after her, if I'd played along with her test. And then I'd remember the laughter, the camaraderie, the friendships I'd gained by staying put. In the end, I realized some people come into your life like fireworks, dazzling, explosive, impossible to ignore. But fireworks are fleeting, burning out as quickly as they appear. Met a guy on Bumble when I was in college and chatted for a few days. He asked me out on a date and wanted to take me to a cocktail bar. I declined that spot as I'm not a drinker, also why a cocktail bar on first meeting. Said he'll find something else. Day comes and he demands my address to send an Uber. I declined, said I'll drive myself. Obviously for safe measures, if something went wrong I would be able to leave when I wanted. He insisted and demanded I not bring a car. I was annoyed and sent an address down the street from me and waited there to be picked up. I got dolled up and hoped for the best. Unsure where the destination was, the Uber stops and lo, and behold it's the damn cocktail bar that I said no to. My mood went back down instantly. I walk in and call him to see where he is, and he tells me he's not there yet. He lives down the street, so he was going to get ready and walk when I arrived. Once again I was annoyed. It took him about 10 to 15 minutes to walk to the bar. He walks in in his gym attire, some super short-ass shorts and an old tee. He mentioned he came from the gym like an hour ago and was chilling until the date. I was once again annoyed and at this point lost interest that he didn't bother to even change. The menu is handed over, and of course I don't look at it cause I don't drink. He asks what would I like, it's on him. I repeat again that I do not like drinking. He acts surprised as if we didn't have this conversation prior to meeting when I had declined the initial offer to meet at a bar. Mind you, this cocktail bar was a themed one. The menu was full of cocktails based on local things like the college or characters, etc. The only food on the menu was like some bread and charcuterie board type foods. I wasn't interested. Anyway, we're in there for about 15 minutes as he ordered 2 drinks, one for himself and me. I took a small sip and then watched him down both small glasses. We then leave. He asks me if I want to go back to his place. I say no. He then asks why. I say 'cause I don't want to, and we don't know each other well. He then says okay, let's go see a movie. I say sure, a movie won't hurt, maybe I'm overreacting. He calls an Uber. We get in. The ride lasts about 5 minutes. I know that there is no movie theater this close. The Uber pulls into an apartment complex. My heart drops. I'm over it. We hop out the car, and he pulls me through the lobby. I'm making a sour face, and he questions me. I tell him that I made it clear that I did not want to come to your apartment. He says his apartment has a huge TV room, and he'll put on a movie for us to watch. That's not what I was expecting when he said, let's go to the movies. Now I'm really regretting not having my car on hand. I reluctantly sit in the TV room, and he puts on some kiddie YouTube show. He likes engrossed in it. I'm confused. He then tries to turn my face for a kiss, but is constantly distracted by the YouTube show staring at it while trying to pull me closer. As I keep pulling away, he asks why I won't let him kiss me. I say, why should I don't know you. He's offended now and storms out. I see this as my chance of escape, so I run out after a minute and head down the first staircase I see. I run to the bottom and hide under the stairs before I leave. Since I'm unsure of my location, I wanted to see what's nearby and if I was near a bus stop or a restaurant to hide in. I wait about 5 minutes, and he is blowing up my phone. I put it on D&D. I run out and immediately start heading towards my heaven. I make it down the street, and I hear someone yelling. I don't turn around. There's lots of college kids being loud. Then I hear my name. Fuck me, bro. He runs UPS to me as I reach an intersection, so I have to stop. He like, where'd you go? Where are we walking right now? I'm like, I'm going home. He freaks out on me saying I should have told him I don't drink. I should have told him that I didn't want to come back to his apartment, which I did. He then says I called you, and you didn't answer. Show me your phone right now. Did you block me? Show me your phone. Mind you, all of this is coming from a man I just met a few hours ago in person. I walk off only telling him that for starters I don't owe him anything, especially not access to my phone. And secondly, that he made me highly uncomfortable and I will not be seeing him again. I walk away for about 20 minutes to make sure he wasn't following me, and then I called an Uber back home. This took place a while ago, 2015-ish, but I'll probably never forget it. I, around 21 at the time, female, was still fairly new in my city. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship, wasn't in the best place mentally, and didn't know a lot of people in town besides my ex and his friends. I was on a dating/hookup app looking for people to hang out casually with, maybe find a FWB or something. I had matched with a 25-year-old guy, Simon. We talked sporadically in the app for a few days. He explained he was in a band and living in a house with his bandmates. He sent me their music. It was just audio on YouTube with a heavily edited still image of 4 or 5 guys playing rock instruments. One of them looked like him. The music was an interesting combination of styles and not really for me, but whatever, he seemed like a nice enough guy. He stopped replying for a few days, and I figured that was that, moved on. Then one day I was at work and got a message from him saying sorry, he'd been so busy, and inviting me to a barbecue with his friends and bandmates in their yard. He had explained that their band manager was providing them the house to live in. Based on the lack of views on the YouTube video, and the fact I only saw one photo of him playing in the band, I figured he was probably exaggerating the band manager thing. I thought it was more likely something along the lines of a bar manager friend, giving them a discount on rent in exchange for being a house band at their bar or something, and didn't think much of it beyond that. Normally I would have just said no to going to a barbecue alone at the home of someone I really didn't know. But I was really bored and figured I might be able to overcome some social anxiety and maybe even make some female friends there since he made it sound like a pretty big party. I put the neighborhood he gave me into maps, and it was a suburban area with lots of families as far as I knew. I figured being in a yard on such a nice summer day wouldn't be overly risky because lots of neighbors would be outside. Plus it was just a few train stops away from my workplace, and I was off in a few hours. I did tell him I wasn't overly comfortable with the idea since I didn't know him well, but I would stop by for a bit if I didn't need to go inside the house at all. He said that was totally fine, which made me feel a lot better. I even made sure to not drink anything for the rest of my shift, so I wouldn't be risking needing to go inside to use the bathroom. I was anxious about just showing up to a barbecue with people I didn't know at all, as he implied that the event was already underway. Plus I would have had a hard time finding a specific address from the backyard side, so I asked Simon if he could meet me at the train station since he said it was a quick walk anyway. He agreed to do that, and I let him know when I was leaving work and what time maps said the train would get to his station. I sent Simon a message to tell him that I had arrived at the train station around 5:30 after I looked around and couldn't find him. He told me he was running behind and to just start walking toward the neighborhood. I was about halfway across the massive train station parking lot when I saw him slowly wandering toward me. I recognized his clothes, wearing bell-bottoms when they were not common, especially for men, and long hair from far away, but up close his face looked pretty different from his photos. It might have been some heavy-duty editing, I don't even know, but he kinda looked like a different guy. Older looking than the 25-year-old guy in the photos by 5 to 10 years, maybe used photos of his brother or something. I don't even know, it was before AI. This was the first real red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe he's just self-conscious, maybe he smokes a lot and doesn't wear sunscreen and hasn't taken pictures in a while. All of his pictures looked candid, so I figured he wasn't much of a selfie guy. And besides, I'm mostly here to make friends anyway, so I shouldn't judge his appearance so harshly. He was also clearly already drunk, but a lot of my ex's friends were heavy drinkers, so that didn't seem strange. He's hosting a barbecue after all. The second red flag came shortly after when we arrived at the front door. I reminded him that I wasn't comfortable going inside the house, but he assured me we would just have to walk through to get to the backyard. Okay, fine. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where you could just walk around the house to get to the backyard. We would have had to backtrack to the main road to go down the alley directly to the backyard. I figured he just forgot what I said about not wanting to go inside and didn't want to cause a bunch of trouble, so I went with it. We got in the house and he immediately closed the door and locked the deadbolt and knob behind me. I didn't think that was too weird since nobody was hanging out inside and a lot of people are just in the habit of locking the door when they come in, but it did still give me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. Then Simon told me he'd really like to give me a tour of the house. I politely declined and reminded him that I was just there for the barbecue. He said that he and his bandmates had worked really hard to get the house and he was really proud of it. At that point I was getting really skeptical because usually when guys would tell me things that seemed a bit far-fetched, they'd let the truth slip by the time they got me to their house. But still, I convinced myself that I was being unreasonable. I was already in the stupid house anyway. He insisted it'd be quick. Not the wisest choice, I know. But I was pretty good at explaining away red flags, so at this point Simon still mostly had a dopey stoner art guy kind of vibe as far as I was concerned. He really didn't seem like a threat, just an insecure oddball who sucks at communicating and fibs a bit. Not unlike my ex, who was definitely emotionally and verbally abusive, but it never escalated past that. I figured at worst he'd get handsy, and I'd get called a prude for not sleeping with him. I didn't have a lot of self-worth at the time, obviously, so I went with it. The tour started pretty uneventfully, other than that the decor in the common areas was obviously chosen by a middle-aged Martha Stewart enthusiast, and not a bunch of guys in a band or their fake band manager. I didn't know if this should make me feel better or worse. On one hand, he was clearly lying, but on the other it made me think it was probably just someone's mom's house and she was out of town, and he didn't want to tell me he lived at a friend's parents' home and didn't actually have a paying job. Again, total red flag, but I could rationalize it at the time. The bedroom doors were all closed, bathroom was unremarkable. He then showed me the kitchen, and I finally saw through the window that there was nobody in the backyard. There weren't even barbecue supplies around. No burgers thawing on the counter, no cocktail supplies lying around, nothing. I asked him where everyone was and why he lied about the barbecue, and he told me that his bandmates were on tour still. They were just running behind due to van trouble, but they should be back any minute, so we could start the party. I asked him why he wasn't on tour with them if he's in the band. I don't even remember what his answer was to that, because it didn't make any sense. At this point I'm out of mental gymnastics to convince myself that this guy isn't just completely full of shit, and I'm really freaked out. Took me long enough. I'm smarter now, don't worry. I started trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation. I hoped that once he was done the tour we could go outside, even just for a minute, and I'd just leave. I'd been in some sketchy situations in the past, but luckily nothing so bad that they tried very hard to physically stop me when I walked away in a semi-public place. I just wasn't comfortable doing it inside the house. I knew this guy was full of shit, but I had no idea how much worse it would get. I instinctively pretended to believe his bullshit. He offered me a beer. I said no thanks because I had to work in the morning. He said okay and cracked one for himself. Then he wanted to take the tour downstairs. I could see from the top of the stairs that the basement was the dark and creepy kind with really small windows, so I refused. I asked if we could go back outside. He said after the tour. I tried to argue about going into the basement, told him I have a spider phobia, don't like basements, etc. All lies, but anything that wouldn't let him realize that he was what I was afraid of. He started to get agitated about my reluctance, so I figured it would be better to just let him show me the damn basement, and then hopefully we could go outside, because I really didn't know what else to do. The basement was fairly unremarkable. Couch, TV, elliptical. Until I noticed something that gave me chills. The house was probably built in the 1990s or late 80s at the absolute earliest, but I saw a door that looked just like the heavy, foam-lined door to the cold storage room in my grandma's house. The kind that only opened from the outside. It was just a smaller version of the big metal doors on commercial walk-in fridges. It looked really out of place in this house. I would absolutely not go anywhere near that door. He opened it and told me it was their soundproof music studio. I looked inside from a few meters away. It did indeed look soundproof. It was about the size of a bedroom, and I could see a few guitars and amps in it. Mattress toppers on the walls. No drum kit or recording equipment that I could see. He insisted I go inside to get a better look. He was standing outside the door motioning for me to go inside. Holy shit, the alarm bells are really going off now. At this point I realized I could totally die here if I'm not careful, and I turned around to run up the stairs. He closed the door and followed me, asking what's wrong, acting like I'm being all unreasonable for not wanting to see his soundproof music studio. So I'm realizing that this is a way sketchier situation than any of my ex's bullshit, and I'm freaked right out. At that point my main objective was getting out of the house. The front and back doors were both closed and locked, so if I tried to run, he'd be able to get to me before I could get the locks open. The bathroom did not have a window. The house had a convoluted floor plan that I wasn't familiar with, and he was much bigger than I am. He was the tall, lanky type, who can run fast even if they're out of shape and smoke a pack a day. I pretended that I was okay with hanging out with him in the hopes that he'd chill out a bit. We made small talk for a few minutes. He cracked another beer, and thankfully he calmed down. I desperately mentioned yet again that it was beautiful outside and suggested we go sit in the yard while we wait. He said no and started to get agitated that I wanted to leave already. I told him that I could stay, but I'd just really like to smoke a cigarette. He told me that we could smoke cigarettes inside and pointed to a cereal bowl full of cigarette butts. God damn it. We sat down at the table and lit some cigarettes. As he was smoking, he started rolling a joint, which he promptly lit as soon as his cig was done. He offered me some, and I said no thanks. He insisted, so I took the smallest puff I could. I'm a pretty seasoned weed smoker, but I pretended to cough excessively and told him I'm a novice, so that's more than enough for me. For a liar himself, he thankfully wasn't very good at picking up on the lies of others. After we smoked, he asked if I'd like to watch a movie until his bandmates get back. I told him that I was really looking forward to spending the day outside and suggested we go for a walk or visit the park. Ideas he did not like or appreciate. At this point, I was trying to keep as much distance as possible between us, but he stayed close enough to me that I could smell the beer on his breath. He grabbed me by the waist, and then I backed away and asked about the barbecue food to try and change the subject and make him think I still believed what he was telling me. He started to get angry again and sternly reiterated that his bandmates should be home any minute, and my anxiety was absolutely through the roof. I tried to calm him down again with generic small talk. Now I don't know how I got so lucky, but the next thing that happened might have saved me. Simon went to the fridge to get another beer and pulled out an empty box. At this point, he's getting even more pissed off than before, so I went out on a limb and suggested we go get some more beer for the party. Because I was out of ideas. I was terrified that it would enrage him even more to suggest, once again, that we leave the house, but I had to try. Thankfully, though, his eyes lit up with the possibility that I could actually be down to drink with him, and he agreed. As we were walking to the liquor store, I still didn't really have a plan, because I was no longer comfortable just walking away from this fucking menace in this weirdly desolate suburb. But I was extremely relieved to be out of that house. I walked with him to the liquor store, and when we got there told him I didn't need to go inside if he was just going to go grab some beer. He insisted that I had to go inside. At that point I was so stressed and frazzled, I just went with him and hoped that a good opportunity to leave would arise. When we got inside the liquor store, he asked what kind of beer I wanted. I reminded him that I had to work tomorrow and didn't want to drink much. He demanded to know what kind of beer I wanted, so I just named the first one that came to mind. We went to pay. The cashier was kind of an asshole, so I didn't ask for help. I probably should have, but I panicked and didn't. I hoped there might be somebody in the parking lot who might help me if I made a scene, but there was nobody. I really regretted not asking the liquor store guy for help, but also remembered the times my ex told people I was crazy, so they wouldn't take me seriously. Liquor store guy definitely seemed like he would have fell for that, so probably for the best I didn't expect him to help me. I had one last idea before I took my chances just trying to run or scream. There was a drugstore across from the liquor store. I told Simon I had to go buy a toothbrush or some shit that vaguely implied I might stay over. He eagerly agreed to this, but tried to follow me into the store. I told him that you're not allowed to bring beer into a drugstore. I don't know if that's even true. I really doubt it's any kind of law, but luckily this drunk douchebag believed it and agreed to wait outside. Now, my naive ass thought maybe I could just wander around in this drugstore for long enough, and he would either get the hint or get sketched out or bored and leave. But no, I must have wandered around the store for at least half an hour, and this jackass is still just standing there staring in the window. This creep didn't even have his phone out. Every time I checked if he was still there, he was just staring through the window looking for me. I didn't feel like I had anybody I could call in the city to come help me. The cops here don't usually take things like this very seriously, and the store workers looked like they were mostly high school students, and I didn't want to drag them into this, so I really didn't feel like I had a lot of options. After being in there for so long, I was surprised he didn't come in to see what was taking me so long. I thought maybe I could lose him in the aisles and sneak out of the store if he did come in, but nope. I ended up hovering around the tills and waited until a big group of friendly-looking people were paying. I followed them out of the store and immediately told Simon to leave me alone and go home. I said it firmly and loudly enough to imply that I would make a scene if need be. Simon looked at the people getting in their car, who were now pausing and looking at us because I had nearly yelled at him, and then he just turned around and left. It was bizarrely anticlimactic, which I was very thankful for. I ran to the train station, which thankfully was in a different direction than his house from the store, and I never heard from him again. When I got home, his app profile had either blocked me or been deleted. Years later, after I stopped compartmentalizing the whole thing, I wish I would have reported him or something. It bothers me to wonder if he tried it again with someone else, but made sure the fridge was stocked first. But at the time I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. I was embarrassed of my choices, and I just wanted to move on from the whole thing. Plus, all I really had was a likely fake first name and a general idea of where the house was, which probably wasn't even his. I'll probably never know any more than I do now, and maybe that's for the best. Anyway, Simon, you lying POS, let's not meet. In my early 20s, I met a man on a hookup app and agreed to go to a barbecue he and his bandmates were hosting at their house in the suburbs. When I met up with him, he was really drunk, looked different from his photos, his bandmates were nowhere to be found, and the decor in the house didn't look like it was theirs. He locked the door and got angry every time I asked to go outside. After a tour of the house that included a soundproof music studio and no evidence of a barbecue, I was able to escape by suggesting we visit the liquor store together after he ran out of beer, and telling him to leave me alone once we were around a group of people. So seriously, I should have been one of those Netflix specials by now. You know, she thought she was just going on a Tinder date, but what happened next will shock you. So a couple of months ago, I was in one of those moods, post-breakup, eating ice cream straight out of the tub, and scrolling through TikTok until your thumb goes numb. My friends had been nagging me to get back out there and meet someone new, so I figured why not. I downloaded Tinder, told myself it was just for fun, and started swiping. That's when I matched with Ethan. Ethan was, well, let's just say he had the kind of rugged, outdoorsy vibe that makes you think, this man has definitely chopped wood shirtless before. His pictures were all hot guy starter pack, hiking in the mountains, holding a dog, classic move, and one artsy black and white shot where he was staring off into the distance like he was contemplating life, or maybe just trying to figure out how to spell charcuterie. His bio was short and sweet: photographer, adventurer, lover of scary movies and late-night conversations. Let's grab a drink and talk about life. Now, I'm a sucker for scary movies and guys with beards, so obviously I swiped right. We started chatting, and surprise, surprise, he was actually funny. Like, genuinely funny. Not the LOL, I give out of politeness funny, but the kind where I was actually laughing at his messages. He made a joke about how his dog was his most stable relationship, and I was hooked. After a few days of texting, Ethan asked me out for dinner. He suggested this cute Italian place downtown, and I thought, wow, a guy who knows how to plan a date? This is promising. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The night of the date, I did the usual pre-date routine, tried on 14 different outfits, curled my hair twice, and spent way too long debating whether red lipstick was hot or trying too hard. By the time I left the house, I was feeling pretty good. When I got to the restaurant, Ethan was already there, waiting outside. He looked just like his photos, which was a relief because, let's be real, the bar for online dating is please don't catfish me. He gave me this big, warm smile and said, "Hey, you made it." The first half of the date was fine. Great, even. We ordered wine, shared some garlic bread, and talked about everything from our favorite movies to the weirdest things we'd ever eaten. He said kangaroo. I said a gas station hot dog at 3 a.m. Ethan was charming, attentive, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. But then about halfway through the meal, things started to get weird. It started small. Ethan kept glancing over my shoulder, like he was watching someone, or something, behind me. At first, I thought maybe he was just nervous or distracted, but it kept happening. Every few minutes, his eyes would flicker to the side, and his smile would falter just a little. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh yeah," he said, waving it off. "Just thought I saw someone I know." I let it go because, honestly, I didn't want to ruin the vibe. But then, when the waiter came by to refill our drinks, Ethan asked for the check. "Already?" I asked, laughing. "What? Are you allergic to good pasta?" He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Nah, just thought we could go somewhere quieter. Talk more without all the noise." Now, this is where most people would probably think, that's kind of weird. But my dumb brain was like, wow, he really wants to get to know me. How sweet. After we left the restaurant, Ethan suggested we go for a walk. It was a nice night, and the area was pretty busy, so I didn't think much of it. We strolled down the street, talking about random stuff, and eventually ended up in this little park. Here's the thing about parks at night. They're either super romantic or super creepy, and this one was leaning hard toward creepy. The streetlights were dim, The trees cast these long, spooky shadows, and there was this weird, eerie quiet that made my skin crawl. But Ethan didn't seem bothered at all. If anything, he seemed excited. "This is nice, huh?" he said, looking around. "Yeah, super cozy," I said, trying to sound chill while also glancing over my shoulder every 5 seconds. Then he stopped walking, turned to me, and said, "Hey, let me show you something." Now at this point, my gut was like, girl, do not follow this man. But my brain, powered by years of bad decisions and horror movie naivety, thought, what's the worst that could happen? Ethan led me down this little path, away from the main part of the park. The further we went, the darker it got, and the more I started to regret every life choice that had led me to this moment. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light even though my heart was pounding. "You'll see," he said, flashing me a grin that, in hindsight, was way too confident. We finally stopped in this clearing, and Ethan pointed to something on the ground. It was a small black bag, like one of those gym bags people use to carry their stuff. "What's that?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. "Just something I left here earlier," he said, crouching down to unzip it. Okay, let me pause here and say, this was the moment I should have run. Like full-on sprinted back to civilization. But instead, I just stood there frozen as Ethan pulled out duct tape. I wish I could tell you I handled this situation like a badass. I wish I'd grabbed a rock and knocked him out or screamed for help. But no, my fight-or-flight response decided to take a third option, stand there like an idiot and pray this isn't happening. What's that for?" I asked, my voice cracking. Ethan looked up at me, and for a split second, his charming facade slipped. His expression turned cold, calculating. "Oh, don't worry," he said, his tone way too casual. "It's not for you. Not for me. What kind of answer is that?" At this point, my brain finally caught up with the situation, and I did what any self-respecting person would do. I lied my ass off. "Oh my God," I said, clutching my stomach. "I think I'm gonna be sick." Ethan blinked, clearly caught off guard. "What?" "Yeah, I think that pasta didn't agree with me," I said, doubling over for dramatic effect. "I need to go. Like now." He hesitated for a second, then sighed and said, "All right, let me walk you back." But I wasn't about to let him get me alone again. No, it's fine," I said quickly. "I'll call an Uber." I didn't wait for him to argue. I pulled out my phone, pretended to call a ride, and started speed walking back toward the main street. The whole way back, I could feel Ethan watching me. He didn't follow, but I swear I could hear his footsteps just behind mine, soft and deliberate. When I finally made it to the main road, I turned around, and he was gone. I got in the first Uber I saw and didn't stop shaking until I was home. The air in the bar felt heavy that night, like something was off before I even walked in. My gut told me to cancel the date. Something about her profile had seemed too good to be true. But I figured, what's the worst that could happen? Famous last words. She waved me over as I walked in, and for a moment I froze. My stomach dropped. The woman sitting at the table looked nothing like the pictures on her dating profile. I'm not talking about a subtle difference, no clever angles or flattering filters. No, this was outright deception. She was easily 100 pounds heavier than her photos suggested. I stood there, caught between disbelief and a vague sense of annoyance. Still, I told myself to be polite. I'd already come all this way, and maybe I could salvage the evening with some decent conversation. I plastered on a smile, walked over, and introduced myself. "Hey, nice to meet you." She grinned back, oblivious to my shock, and launched into small talk like nothing was wrong. I sat down, still trying to process the situation, when she flagged down the bartender and ordered a drink. On my tab, of course. The first few minutes were awkward but manageable. I kept the conversation light, asking about her interests, her job, anything to fill the silence. But then she started talking, and that's when things took a nosedive straight into the twilight zone. Within the first 30 minutes, I learned more about her than I ever wanted to know. First, she casually mentioned that she was married. Yes, married. She said it like it was no big deal, like it was just another fun fact about her life. My brain screeched to a halt. "Wait," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "You're married?" "Oh yeah," she said, waving a hand like it was nothing. "But don't worry, he's in prison." I blinked. "Prison?" "Yeah," she said, sipping her drink. "He's been locked up for a while now. I mean, it's not like we're really together anymore, you know?" I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she'd just told me, but she wasn't done. Not even close. And like, I'm doing so much better now, she continued, her voice picking up speed. I'm 12 days clean from heroin. Heroin. My stomach flipped. 12 days. That's not even 2 weeks. I stared at her, unsure of how to respond. Was I supposed to congratulate her? Offer support? I was still stuck on the fact that her husband was in prison. Oh, and I have 3 kids, she added, almost as an afterthought. But, they're in the system right now. The system. My brain short-circuited. I felt like I was watching a train derail in slow motion, every piece of information she shared crashing into the next. Married. Prison. Heroin. The system. Each revelation was like a punch to the gut, and I could barely keep up. She kept talking, oblivious to my growing discomfort. Her words blurred together as I sat there, trying to figure out how I'd ended up in this nightmare. This wasn't just a bad date. This was a full-blown horror story. The kind you tell your friends about later, and they don't even believe you. I glanced at my watch, trying to come up with an excuse to leave. But she was so deep into her story, some convoluted tale about her husband's crimes and her struggles to get her kids back, that I didn't know how to interrupt. I just nodded along, barely listening, my mind racing for an exit strategy. Finally, she paused long enough for me to cut in. I said, forcing a smile, I just realized I have an early morning tomorrow. I should probably get going. Her face fell, but she recovered quickly. Oh, okay, she said, looking disappointed but not surprised. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a $20 bill, and handed it to the bartender. This should cover my drinks, I said, loud enough for her to hear. I didn't offer to pay for hers. Not after everything she'd just dropped on me. As I stood up, she looked at me, her expression a mix of hope and resignation. So, do you think we could do this again sometime? I almost laughed. I'll let you know, I said, avoiding eye contact as I walked out the door. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face, and I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering unease. My heart was pounding, and my hands felt clammy. I couldn't believe what had just happened. On the drive home, I replayed the evening in my head, every detail somehow worse than the last. The deception, the bombshell confessions, the complete lack of awareness, it all felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I thought about her kids, her husband, her struggles with addiction, and for a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered how she'd lied about everything from the start, and that sympathy evaporated. I deleted her number the moment I got home. Blocked her on the dating app too. I wasn't about to risk her showing up in my inbox months later with some new drama. As far as I was concerned, this chapter was closed. The wine bar was packed. Music thumped in the background, conversation buzzed at an unbearable pitch, and I could barely hear myself think. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying to stay polite while my date chattered away. Except, I couldn't understand a word he was saying. The place was so loud it was like he was talking underwater. I kept nodding and smiling, pretending to catch bits and pieces, but honestly, I just wanted to get out of there. He leaned in closer, probably thinking that would help, and before I realized what was happening, he kissed me. Not a sweet, tentative first date kiss. Oh no. This was sloppy, wet, and so uncoordinated it felt like he was trying to eat my face. I froze, stunned, while he kept going, oblivious to how uncomfortable I was. His hands didn't wander, thankfully, but the kissing was so bad it didn't even matter. People brushed past us, and I was pressed up against the wall like I was in some awkward teen drama gone horribly wrong. After 5 excruciating minutes, 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours, I pulled away, faking a yawn. I'm so sorry, I said, summoning every ounce of politeness I had left. I'm really tired. I think I need to head home. He looked disappointed, but I didn't care. I mumbled something about early mornings and bolted for the door. The night ended there. I went home, threw on my comfiest pajamas, and buried the whole cringe-worthy experience in the back of my mind. Weeks passed, then months. I had all but forgotten about the bad date. He didn't message, and I didn't care. Life moved on. And then, out of the blue, his name popped up on my phone. I stared at the message for a moment, half tempted to delete it without reading. Curiosity got the better of me, though, and I opened it. Hey, I've been thinking, and I just don't think we're sexually compatible. I blinked. Once. Twice. Then reread it. Was this guy serious? We went on 1 date. 1. And the only thing close to sexual was his attempt at the world's worst kiss. I rolled my eyes and started to type a sarcastic reply, but before I could hit send, another message came through. My daughter, though, she's an adult now. She can have sex with whoever she wants. It's amazing how open she is about it. She tells me everything. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen, horrified. Surely I'd read that wrong. Surely this grown man, this father, wasn't casually discussing his daughter's sex life with me, a relative stranger. But there it was in black and white, like some awful punchline to a joke no one asked for. He didn't stop there. The messages kept coming, each one worse than the last. He went on about how proud he was of her freedom and how refreshing it was that she felt comfortable sharing those details with him. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Every word made my stomach churn. What kind of person says things like that? To someone they barely know, no less? I felt dirty just reading it. It wasn't just creepy, it was disturbing. This wasn't just an awkward overshare. It was something darker, something that made my skin crawl and my hands shake as I stared at my phone. I didn't reply. What could I possibly say? Any response felt like engaging in a conversation I desperately wanted no part of. Instead, I blocked him, deleted the messages, and tried to shake off the deep unease clinging to me like a shadow. But the encounter haunted me. I kept thinking about that wine bar, about the way he kissed me like he was entitled to it, about the way he'd messaged me months later, like he had some kind of twisted authority over my body, my worth. And then there was the way he talked about his daughter, so casual, so vile. It was as if he couldn't see how wrong it was, as if he thought he was being open-minded or progressive instead of horrifying. I wondered about her, his daughter. Did she know what he was saying about her? Did she trust him with her private life, only for him to turn around and exploit it in conversations with strangers? The thought made my heart ache. I imagined her as some sweet, naive person who thought she could confide in her dad, never realizing he was twisting her openness into something grotesque. And then, of course, there was the darker possibility. What if she wasn't confiding in him? What if he was making it all up, constructing this sick fantasy in his head? Either way, it made me sick. Either way, it made me wish I'd never swiped right in the first place. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, his words replayed in my mind, like some grotesque whisper I couldn't shut out. I kept picturing his face, the way he looked at me that night at the wine bar, the way he seemed so normal. I thought about all the other people he might have dated, all the other women who might have sat across from him, completely unaware of what lurked beneath the surface. And then there was that one terrifying thought I couldn't shake. What if I hadn't excused myself that night? What if I'd let him come closer, let him into my space, into my life? I shuddered at the thought, grateful for the instincts that had told me to run. The dim glow of the bar's neon sign flickered in the window as I checked my phone for the 10th time. 7:32 p.m. He was officially late. My gut told me to call it and leave, but I brushed it off. He's probably stuck in traffic, I told myself, trying to be patient. We'd been talking for a week, and he seemed like a decent guy. Divorced, a dad in his 30s, someone who'd get the importance of showing up on time. When he finally strolled in, nearly 30 minutes late, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. That was mistake number one. Sorry about that, he said, flashing me a smile that was just a little too confident for someone who'd kept me waiting. Without missing a beat, he flagged down the waitress and ordered a beer and a shot of Fireball. Then he turned to me with an almost rehearsed grin. You want one too? I hesitated. A shot and a beer on a Wednesday night wasn't really my thing, but I didn't want to seem uptight. Sure, I said, forcing a smile. He clinked his shot glass against mine, and I braced myself as the cinnamon burn hit my throat. At first, the conversation was fine. He was chatty, maybe a little too chatty. Words spilled out of him like a dam had broken, and no matter what I said, he interrupted me. Compliments flew like confetti. You're so smart. You're gorgeous. I love the way you think. Nice, sure, but they came so fast and so often that I couldn't even finish a thought. Every time I tried to steer the conversation somewhere meaningful, he'd bulldoze right over me. But the real red flags started piling up with the drinks. By the time he was halfway through his third beer and second shot, I was already eyeing the clock. He wasn't slowing down. Another round? He asked, signaling the waitress before I could even respond. Maybe we should order some food, I suggested, hoping to sober him up a bit. Burgers arrived, and for a brief moment, I thought things were stabilizing. Then he chased his meal with yet another shot and 2 more beers. By 9:30, he was buzzing hard, talking even faster, slurring just enough to make me uncomfortable. Meanwhile, I nursed my second beer, counting down the minutes until I could politely call it a night. When the check came, I grabbed my bag, hoping this was the end of it. But as we walked toward the exit, the waitress came running after us. "Hey," she called, glancing nervously at him. "Are you driving tonight? You've had a lot to drink." He scoffed, waving her off. "I'm fine," he said, his words a little too sharp. "I have a high tolerance. I didn't even drink that much." The waitress shot me a concerned look, and I felt my stomach twist. "Maybe you should order an Uber," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Just to be safe." "I'm fine," he insisted, his tone more insistent now. Then he leaned in closer, the smell of Fireball and stale beer heavy on his breath. "But hey, I was thinking, maybe I could come back to your place." The alarm bells were deafening now. "Oh, I have to work early," I stammered, taking a step back. He looked hurt, almost weepy, and before I could react, he leaned in, trying to kiss me. I turned my head just in time, mumbling something about next time, and darted to my car as quickly as I could. I never heard from him again, and trust me, I didn't lose sleep over it. I have another story to tell. I mean, if I thought that date was bad, the next one came with a whole new level of unease. This time, it was a paramedic, divorced, good-looking, and fresh off a long shift. We met at a quiet diner, and I was cautiously optimistic. He seemed normal enough when we first sat down, but as the meal progressed, things started to unravel. It started innocently enough, small talk about his job, his kids. But then he brought up his ex-wife. At first, it was the usual venting. Things didn't work out, they fought a lot, co-parenting was hard. But then his tone shifted, and the things he said, they weren't just bitter. They were dark. "She's bleeding me dry with child support," he muttered, stabbing at his fries. "I'd love to hire someone to take care of her, you know what I mean?" My heart stopped. He laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that made you feel at ease. It was cold, humorless, and the way he looked at me afterward, like he was waiting for me to agree, sent a chill down my spine. I forced a smile, my pulse racing. "That sounds really hard," I said carefully, trying not to escalate the situation. Every instinct in me was screaming to get out of there, but I didn't want to make him angry. I didn't want to be the next person he casually wished violence upon. After that, the conversation stalled. He picked at his food, occasionally muttering about how unfair life was. I nodded along, pretending to listen, all the while planning my exit. The second the check came, I practically threw my card at the waitress, eager to end the night. Outside, I mumbled something about having an early morning and walked to my car as quickly as I could. He didn't try to stop me, didn't even say goodbye. He just stood there in the parking lot, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The whole way, I kept replaying his words in my head. I'd love to hire someone to take care of her. It wasn't a joke. I could feel it in my gut. He meant it. Like the first guy, I never heard from him again. And honestly, I'm glad. But those nights stuck with me. Not just because they were bad dates, but because they reminded me how quickly things can go from awkward to downright dangerous. Now, every time I agree to meet someone new, I double-check my escape plan. Because sometimes, you don't know who you're sitting across from until it's too late. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the clock. The red numbers glared back at me, 9:47 p.m. He was supposed to be here hours ago. I'd been pacing the room for what felt like forever, texting and checking my phone every few minutes. The messages started casually enough, asking if he was close, but by now, I'd stopped bothering. The last reply I got was almost laughable. "Heading your way soon. Left the game early for you winking face. Oh, how lucky I was." To be fair, the build-up to this moment had been nothing but good vibes. We'd been chatting on Tinder for weeks, 6 to be exact. Every day, without fail, there were messages, jokes, memes, late-night banter. When we finally met in person a couple of weeks ago, it had gone really well. The chemistry was electric, the kind that made you think, wow, maybe this is actually something. So when he suggested making a weekend of it, splitting a hotel room since he lived a couple of hours out of town, it felt like the natural next step. But now, sitting in this half-empty hotel room, the thrill of anticipation had been replaced with the cold sting of reality. He wasn't here. He'd rolled into town late, hours late, and instead of heading straight to the hotel, he'd gone to meet up with his friends. At the footy. The FODY. I couldn't help but replay his words over and over in my head. Left the game early for you. He said it like he deserved a medal, like this grand sacrifice of leaving his mates and a pint a little early was proof of his devotion. By the time he finally arrived, it was just past 10 p.m. The door creaked open, and there he was, all smiles, casual as if nothing was wrong. "Hey babe," he said, tossing his bag onto the chair like this was the most normal scenario in the world. "You should feel special, you know. I've never left a game early for a girl before." Oh, my God. I just stared at him, too stunned to even reply at first. Special? I was supposed to feel special because he dragged himself here 3 hours late after hanging out with his friends instead of keeping his word. The audacity of it all was almost comical. Almost. "Wow," I said finally, my voice icy. "What an honor." He either didn't catch the sarcasm or chose to ignore it because he flopped down on the bed next to me, acting like he'd just won boyfriend of the year. "Yeah, the guys couldn't believe it," he said, laughing. "But I told them, this girl's different." Different? Sure, I was different. Different enough to deserve being stood up in my own hotel room while he lived it up at a football game. Different enough to hear about how lucky I should feel for being someone's sloppy second priority. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to demand why he thought this was okay. But another part of me, cooler, quieter, more detached, realized something important. This wasn't just a bad night. This was a preview, a glimpse into how he operated, how he saw other people. "Did you have fun?" I asked, my tone dangerously even. He grinned. "Yeah, it was great. I mean, it's always a good time with the boys, you know? But I knew I had to get back here for you. Like I said, I've never done that for anyone before." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Wow," I said again, standing up and grabbing my phone. "You're really laying it on thick." His grin faltered. "What do you mean?" I turned to face him, finally letting the mask drop. "I mean, you're acting like leaving a game a little early is some huge romantic gesture. Like I should be falling over myself with gratitude that you even bothered to show up at all." He blinked, clearly not expecting the shift in tone. "Well, I did come, didn't I? 3 hours late," I shot back. "After hanging out with your friends. You didn't even text me to let me know what was going on until I asked. Do you have any idea how disrespectful that is?" Now he was on the defensive. "Oh, come on. It's not like I bailed. I just wanted to see my friends first." "You're overreacting." Overreacting. The classic line. I almost laughed again. "Right," I said, grabbing my bag. "Because expecting basic decency is such a high bar." He sat up, frowning now. "Wait, what are you doing?" "Leaving," I said simply. "You can have the room. I'll book somewhere else." "Wait, seriously?" he asked like he couldn't believe it. "You're really gonna throw a fit over this?" I paused at the door, looking back at him one last time. "It's not a fit. It's a boundary. Enjoy the rest of your night." And with that, I was gone. As I stepped into the elevator, my heart was racing, a mix of anger and relief flooding my chest. Part of me wondered if I'd overreacted, if I should have stayed and tried to talk it out. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just about the game, or the hotel, or the tardiness. It was about respect, or rather, the complete lack of it. The ride home the next morning felt lighter somehow. Sure, I was disappointed. It sucked to realize someone you had chemistry with wasn't who you thought they were. But there was a strange sense of empowerment too, knowing I'd walked away instead of settling for crumbs. I should have trusted my gut the moment I noticed the tan line on his ring finger. But no, I told myself to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just forgot to take it off while tanning, I thought. Maybe he's divorced. Maybe I'm overthinking. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. That tiny, innocent tan line was just the beginning of a night that spiraled into something out of a psychological thriller. We met at this trendy bar downtown. The kind of place that's all dim lighting, exposed brick, and overpriced cocktails. He walked in, sharp suit, confident stride, and a smile that was just a little too perfect. He seemed polished enough to sandpaper over the warning bells in my head. When he sat down, his cologne was just subtle enough to seem tasteful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd drowned in it on purpose, like he was trying to cover something up. I just didn't know it yet. "So, what do you do?" I asked casually, sipping my drink. "I'm head of security at this big multi-million-dollar corporation," he said, leaning back with an air of practiced confidence. The words dripped out like he'd rehearsed them in the mirror 100 times. "It's intense work, but someone's got to keep things safe, right?" I nodded, trying to seem impressed, but something about the way he said it felt off. My friend's husband is actually head of security for a major firm, and I know how he talks about his job. The jargon, the pride, the details, it's like second nature to him. This guy? He was vague, almost too smooth, like he'd memorized a job description off LinkedIn, and hoped I wouldn't ask questions. Still, I let it slide. Maybe he was just trying to sound impressive. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then came the next red flag. No kids, he said, smiling over his whiskey. Never been married either. Just haven't found the right person yet. I raised an eyebrow. Really? He laughed, leaning forward like he was sharing a secret. What? You don't believe me? I shrugged, playing it cool, but something about the way he said it felt rehearsed. Like he'd delivered that line before, probably to more people than just me. I wanted to believe him, but my gut wasn't buying it. And then when he went to pay the bartender, I saw it. His wallet slipped open just enough for me to catch a glimpse of the photo tucked inside. A family portrait. A woman, a little boy, and him, smiling like they were the picture of happiness. My stomach dropped. My throat tightened. He came back, oblivious, flashing that same fake smile. So what's your next drink? He asked, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just seen what I saw. I froze for a moment, then forced a smile. I'm good for now. My voice came out tight, barely audible over the pounding in my ears. My mind raced. Who was the woman in the picture? His sister? A friend? No. That tan line. That portrait. That lie about no kids. It was all starting to add up, and I didn't like where it was leading. But I wasn't done yet. I wasn't going to let him off that easily. So, I said, trying to sound casual, head of security, huh? My friend's husband does that too. What kind of stuff do you handle? He hesitated. Just for a split second, but it was enough. His confident facade cracked, and for the briefest moment, I saw the wheels in his head spinning, scrambling for an answer. Oh, he said, waving a hand like it was no big deal. Overseeing operations, managing a team, that kind of thing. That kind of thing? My friend's husband has told me about his job before, and trust me, it's not just that kind of thing. It's detailed, specific, and intense. And this guy couldn't even fake his way through a basic conversation about it. I smiled, pretending to be impressed. Inside, I was boiling. Why lie? Why weave this ridiculous web of nonsense when the truth was probably less complicated? And more importantly, why lie to me? The rest of the night was a blur of him rambling about his job, his single life, and how he was looking for someone real. I played along, nodding and smiling, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying everything in my head, the tan line, the photo, the flimsy answers. It was like piecing together a puzzle where every piece screamed, this guy's a fraud. Finally, I'd had enough. Hey, I said, cutting him off mid-sentence. I actually need to head out. Early morning tomorrow. He looked surprised but recovered quickly, flashing that too-perfect smile again. Oh, of course. Let me walk you to your car. I didn't want him anywhere near my car, but I nodded, keeping the mask on. The walk to the parking lot was awkward, his small talk grating on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. When we reached my car, he leaned in like he was expecting a goodnight kiss. I stepped back, my voice steady but firm. Look, I don't think this is going to work. His smile faltered. What? Why? I paused, debating whether to call him out or just leave it at that. But I couldn't help myself. You're married, aren't you? His face went pale. For the first time all night, he was speechless. And that was all the confirmation I needed. I shook my head, disgusted. Good luck with whatever this is, I said, getting into my car and locking the doors. As I drove away, I couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. How many other people had he lied to? How many other women had fallen for his fake charm and fake life? The thought made my skin crawl. When I got home, I told my friend everything. She was horrified, especially when I mentioned the head of security lie. That's so creepy, she said. Why would he even lie about something like that? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I'd dodged a bullet, or maybe a whole firing squad. And even now, I can't help but wonder, who was the woman in the photo? His wife? His ex? And did she know what kind of man she was dealing with?